Welcome to A Better HR Business, the podcast that looks at how HR consultants and HR tech firms grow their businesses and how they help their employers to get the best out of their people. Remember, for show notes and downloads, go to www.getmorehrclients.com/podcast. That's getmorehrclients.com/podcast. Okay, let's get started.
Hello, thanks for joining me again. Great to have you along. And I'm really looking forward to today's conversation with Mike Minett. Mike has done many things, achieved so much, and is building so much more. But even more wonderfully, he's a fellow Aussie. So I'm very pleased to be chatting to someone with a similar accent to me. So this is a great start already. Mike is the founder and chief ideas guy at a very cool company called PORTABL. And PORTABL's doing amazing things. It delivers portable and flexible insurance, health and wellbeing, savings and discounts, and financial services into the freelance workforce, which is all about the future of work. That's definitely where we're going with the change in the workforce, rise of AI, gig economy, etc. And so they do all kinds of things. I don't want to spoil Mike's thunder, so we'll get into it in a moment. But firstly, Mike, thanks very much for joining me today.
Brilliant, Ben. Great to be here. Appreciate the nod to Australia. I first came to London in 95 and people still call out my Australian accent almost 30 years later. So I must have been very sharp when I first got here, if you can still pick it up in the tones. But no, thanks for having me. Look forward to getting into it.
I need to ask, where are you from in Australia?
Mostly Melbourne, down the bottom, and a little bit of the Sunshine Coast, Queensland, up in the top. First came to London in 95 on a 2-year working holiday visa. And I've been here mostly since. I think I've officially done more years in the UK than Australia.
We're talking about PORTABL, but you've got a really interesting history, a really interesting track record. You came from the investment banking, or the banking sector anyway, and you've since moved into founding businesses and building them up and so on. But in between, there was an interesting little moment where you wrote a book, right? Can you tell us about that?
Yes, the famous book. Mostly a doorstop these days and available in all good opportunity shops, 2 for 1. Yeah, look, the journey, it's all about the journey. I kind of fell into investment banking and technology, again, here in London, but mostly as a contractor or self-employed consultant and rarely as an employee. And as part of that, I always wanted to do my own thing. So I kind of had this moment, if I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it kind of feeling. And I started to invest pretty heavily in some coaching with folks who I thought could help either unblock or help me on the journey.
Yeah.
As part of that, I was sitting in this room. There would have been about 600 folks, and the fellow leading the session threw down this challenge to the room. I guarantee 80% of you are thinking about doing something, have likely started a few things but never seen it through, or have got 3 or 4 things on the go, and then we'll leave this room with another 3 or 4 things to get after. But it's like, I'm here to tell you, unless you start something and see it through to execution to 100%, you'll never get there. So it's not for you, this journey. Then he threw down the challenge. I want you to leave this room today and start something and see it through. And one of the ideas was to write a book from start to publication. I was like, okay, all right, well, that's something I could do. I'd like to take on that challenge. And I did. And then I was struggling to think about, what am I going to write about? But as I was finding myself transitioning away from corporate, trying to get on this startup journey, involved in that, I thought, well, why not just capture the steps that I'm doing and the work that I'm doing and then turn it around and put it into some sort of coaching book.
Nice.
The book was boldly called Follow Me Out the Door. And the cover of the book is me walking out the door of the office for the final time. And since then, I've had people suggest there needs to be a second book. You could call that one, make sure it's not a revolving door. Because a number of times on the entrepreneurial startup journey, it gets pretty tough and you actually wish for the more potentially comfortable life that corporate offered. So yes, there's a book.
I kind of agree with that concept of getting something done, finishing it. So you prove to yourself, I can do that. Let's aim for something a bit bigger now. Skipping forward then to PORTABL, because I know you've done a lot of stuff in between, but I really want to learn about PORTABL because it will help people who are listening to this show. I alluded to the fact that it's all about helping the gig economy or freelance or independent consultants. What are the problems it solves? And then secondly, what is it, in fact? What does it do?
Just to take it back a step. So as I said, I'd spent 20 years as a contractor, self-employed person. Now that I've lived the pain, and it's not easy. There's so much you have to do and organize just to be able to do your coding or do your graphics art or deliver your project or whatever it might be as that solo self-employed. So live the pain. It's funny, the book did lead on to other things. one of which was founding a startup here in London called the Positive Aging Company. And we were interested then about the aging workforce and how that's impacting companies, families, and so forth. Long story short, ran that business for a couple of years, ended up getting acquired and sitting inside Mercer, the big HR pensions group. And it was a classic, the itch happened again on day one. I sat in a 7-hour induction thinking, oh my gosh, I'm back in corporate. How did this happen? What's next? I saw some research from McKinsey back in 2018 predicting by about now, 40% of the workforce were going to be working outside of full-time employment independently. You mentioned the gig economy and sharing economy, and since COVID and of course AI, that 40% is not far off. And I was sitting inside Mercer thinking, okay, the 50% in full-time employment are very well looked after, whether they appreciate it or not. Insurance, pension, gym memberships, beers after work, laptop support, recognition, training. Who's going to look after the 40% outside of those systems and structures? Because I've been one of them and I know how tough it is. And I know that everything stops for those in full-time employment. So the idea was to take as much of that employee benefits model into this new world. Instead of being an employee of Portable, you're a member of Portable. And what can we reconstruct around you and your family, just as a reasonable company used to make available to you? And we've got some clever ways to enable a lot of that support. And it is holistic, it is personalized, because everyone is on an individual journey, thinking about making the jump, have made the jump. Oh crap, this is much harder than I thought it would ever be. And have I done the right thing? So there's all of these steps that people work through. And at each stage, they need different levels of help and support. And then, of course, what we call stage of life. Young, free, full of beans, no care in the world. Old and grey like me with dependents and things to be worrying about. So long story short, there's quite a holistic offer within that. And the idea is it doesn't matter where you're at in your journey, got some simple things to get you started with. And as we understand more about you and your situation, we'll be looking to add more help and support over time.
How does someone work out what services or aspects of the platform to use, whether that be insurance or health related stuff? Is there a guide? Is there a community? How does it work?
The business model is actually B2B2C. So we work with teams and organizations and companies and associations and co-working spaces where these populations exist. We make Portable platform either directly available or white labeled through that particular organization to get it in front of their population. And then in they come. It's a platform, it's a marketplace, it's a community. Within the marketplace, as an example, there's everything from all the different types of insurances you might need, mental health support, electric vehicle leasing, gym memberships, savings for supermarkets, a whole plethora of stuff. And the idea is you then cherry pick what you think you might need based on what you've got going on at that particular time. And the model, if you like, is, and the way a company was able to provide everybody with life insurance is because they were buying 1,000 policies at a time. So Portable, in a sense, is like a big buying group underneath. Anything we present is significantly cheaper than what you and I could go and organize directly. And secondly, we've done the work to find the trusted partners who really understand the life of the independent and are genuinely there to try and help make it better, because so much of industry doesn't understand self-employment, and that's where the models are kind of broken.
That makes sense. I was going to ask, why wouldn't people just go out and get a point solution, an insurance product or a health product, whatever? But you're saying it's that bulk buying, group buying, economic power, which helps reduce those rates because you're buying in bulk. And you've also done the work in researching and looking at the partners and so on to narrow it down to see who would fit the audience, the consumers.
It's a crazy world. Yesterday, you, Ben, were in full-time employment for a company, and they would have provided you with a pension, life insurance, health insurance, and some things. And then tomorrow you decide to go out on your own, set up as a consultant or a business builder. Your underwriting suffers, your credit history suffers. You can no longer get a mortgage without 3 years of company. It's almost bonkers. What's changed? You're still on the same sort of trajectory and potential, but now you're same expertise. But because the model thinks self-employment is dangerous or less risky than full-time employment, which again in this day and age is an arguable point, it doesn't make sense. But from the individual's level, simply we're looking to save you time so you don't have to go out and waste days, a month in sorting this stuff. Save you money, of course. And then the stress and anxiety of, I don't have insurance. Should I have had insurance? It's lonely, my existence. How do I connect into a community of like-minded folks just to bounce some stuff off? So taking care of some simple, almost Maslow's hierarchy of needs, some simple safety things first, and then depending on your ambition and what you're trying to get up to, we're pretty confident we can be helpful and supportive. I come back to, because I've been that person for 20 years. As a team, we're over 100 years of freelancer pain journey. It's not easy, but it's game on because it's almost 40% of the world's workforce. Our kids will only work this way. So lots of challenges, but lots of opportunities moving forward.
It's one thing to say that there's a gap in the market or there's a need, but what did you do to validate it or to test that people would be interested?
So I've personally had over 1,000 conversations now with individuals. And I start with the question, what keeps you awake at night? And it's been fascinating, just the randomness of all of that, to try and prioritize, all right, well, what's the one thing or what's the one compelling product or offer? And there's not one thing. That's been our experience, which is why we have to start with a general until we learn more about you. That's that. And then with regards to validation, it's almost been a little bit overwhelming. We are, in a sense, creating a new category. So people actually don't know that this type of offer or service is now available to them. And poorly served, poorly understood, and poorly supported is the consistent feedback. And understood, I think, is the big one. What we find is so much of industry have never lived the life of a freelancer or self-employed. So they don't know the stresses and the strains. Those who have, again, are looking for all the help and support they can get. Now, I think one of the challenges we've got is back in the day, the company paid for all of that and made all of that available. And now we're asking the individual to pay something and to invest in this sort of stuff. But it's the same thing. Lose your health, it's going to impact your ability to earn. Lose your ability to earn, it's going to impact your health and especially your mental health. We're fortunate here in the UK. You can, generally speaking, fall back on a health system in some shape or form. But I know as a founder, as a self-employed person, trying to get an appointment at the NHS, trying to take then half a day off to get to that appointment in 3 weeks' time, long after the issue's probably passed, you're just always running this, if nothing else, a health risk. And there's some nice and interesting little products and services to help that are a lot more affordable than what people think.
If you ask them a question at the start, what keeps you up at night, then they might say global warming or war and stuff. How did you take it to the next level that turns into an HR tech product?
We kind of knew the answers. Having been that person and understood the sort of the top five, finding work, getting your next contract, trying to get a mortgage, not having any health insurance, having had it. So we knew.
You knew where you were heading.
So it was double validating on that. And then secondly, having been inside industry, the employee benefits, the health and the pension industry, also knew where the models were broken. So kind of knew what it needed to look like going forward. And this is the journey we're on now, literally. So we are launching in the UK and launching in Ireland with a fair wind, Germany a little bit later. It's bringing it all to life. Coming back into your world and you're thinking about the marketing, which is the journey we are now on. One of the challenges we've got is people identify very differently. So a freelancer, a contractor, self-employed, portfolio lifestyle, digital nomad, flexible, contingent, remote, side hustle, influencers, content. There's about 21 different badges that independent workers identify themselves under. And all of them think and act quite differently within that. However, everyone's kind of exactly the same. You're out there by yourself, trying to make a go of it, having to do a whole lot of admin just before you get to what we call the value creation work, and looking for all the help and support you can get to be able to keep going.
I remember from the HR consulting world, funnily enough, you go into a business to help with different HR issues and they'll always say, oh, we're different here. And it might be employee engagement, employment law, whatever it may be, issues. At the end of the day, a business is a business, people are people. Yes, you sell different things, but I gather that there'll be different types of identifications, gig workers, freelancers, consultants, etc. But you're right, they've all got similar needs at the end of the day for financial health and business, life goals and needs. What are you doing to get the word out there? What sort of marketing, either for now or in the future, because you're launching across the UK and Ireland, I think Germany next, and I suspect probably the US or North America beyond that. What are your plans in terms of getting the word out?
Yeah, look, you're right. Big ambitions, plans to get the word out. It's a piece of work that we just absolutely need to get started on. So we're kind of in go-to-market phase, sharing the story, getting in front of the audiences. The business model is B2B2C. So, I think one of the challenges is we need to market to the business about the opportunity of Portable to be made available to their populations of contractors or fractionals or tenants in their co-working space. But we also then have to market and appeal to the individuals who are the actual members and the recipients of the service downstream. So I find personally marketing or sharing a story in a B2B to B2C proposition pretty tricky. Then within the B2B, because it's 40% of the workforce, these populations are everywhere. So ideal customer profiles, we've got about 7 or 8, which is not necessarily clever. Trying to just pick one and get deep into one, you have to be focused, particular audience, particular story, particular opportunity before you start trying to take over the world. So early stage challenges, but definitely marketing, and I believe marketing leads to sales. And
No, that's right. There's so many angles you can take. I'm curious, you teamed up with Alligator, which is the leading HR tech company builder in Europe, as the lead investor. So that's very exciting. So what was that? And secondly, I think you've got an interesting story as to how you connected with them.
Yeah. Well, look, it definitely points to the future. There's a brilliant little, I don't know if you call it technology or service out there called Boardy, BOARDY.ai. Boardy will interview you, talk you through what are you trying to look for. And I thought, this is curious. I'll give it a go. And we were quite specific. So early stage startup, we are fundraising at the moment. So we're looking for angel investors or high net worths or family offices who are committed and passionate about HR tech or future of work, actively writing checks and investing in early stage, sort of pre-revenue businesses, and hit send. So off it went, and it came back literally 30 seconds later and said, okay, I've got this person called Michael. He's in my network. Here's his profile. Would you be interested? And we had a look and I said, oh yeah, wow, that's cool. He's an active investor. So we had a chat with Michael, and he was absolutely brilliant. Since joined Portable on our advisory board.
Wow.
But he said, at the end of the day, I believe in it. I see the opportunity. I want to be involved. You're a little too early for our fund, but I've got my friend who runs Alligator who are very active. So let me make an introduction. Bang. Became investors into Portable all through AI, having spent and continue to spend almost full-time effort to raise our fund. We're just looking to close our last sort of 100K territory. To have that magic happen within minutes, again, points to the future.
What did Benjamin Visser from Alligator see in Portable?
They're a very clever group network. They've got about 150 senior HR professionals from across Europe, so C-suite folks, predominantly German, but across Europe, who are part of their network, part of their ecosystem, and they invest as a syndicate into opportunities. So they're pretty plugged in to what's happening on the ground. And this shift away from full-time employment to other ways of working is a global transformation, and certainly, happening fast in Germany. The second thing with the German workforce, which comes back to some of our earlier understandings, is it's an aging workforce. So there's these transitions and shifts, people coming off those long careers, one company into almost a transition, which will be gig work and freelance work going forward. So they're plugged in on a personal level with their HR network, and secondly, the sort of the demographic trends that are driving market shifts. So they get to see both sides of the equation. Well, I believe, and I know them to have seen an opportunity. Yeah, let's get Portable into and across EMEA at some very future point, because these folks are piling into this space now at pace and always looking for all the help and support that they can get.
That's so cool. And I love the CHRO angle that they're in there as advisors and maybe as investors into that fund. Who knows? But
no, they are investors as well. And
that's even better because they've got skin in the game, right?
It's skin in the game, but also quite cleverly access to distribution. They are more often than not sitting inside companies and aware of this transition and shift, sort of part of the present and part of the future, and an enabler. Yeah. And I don't think HR tech was particularly sexy maybe 10 years ago, but all of a sudden, especially with AI now transforming the way we will all work, it's a pretty compelling space and opportunity to be part of.
Can you share some final thoughts or advice to other founders in the either HR tech world or the consulting space in the world of work? Thoughts, lessons learned along the way as to starting and building a business in the HR world.
It's more do as I say, not as I do. So I've learned a lot, made all the mistakes. Founding anything, it's tough. And actually, it's got nothing to do with the idea or the opportunity. It comes back to personal sort of resilience and tenacity and persistence, creativity to get yourself out of dramas and troubles. But to say, just keep going. And that's almost the mantra. If you genuinely believe in what you are building, you are double checking and triple checking the data points to make sure that it's not just Mike and some folly. There's actually something meaningful going on underneath or in front of you. Keep going. And then there's some brilliant communities. This is one that came through really clearly, the lack of community, the missing of community. Used to go into the office, beers after work, water cooler moments. But when you're sitting at home, working from home, as so much of us are now as part of this transition, loneliness has become something quite powerful and interesting and to be considered. Tap into, there's some great events, live events in person, but also some Slack groups and communities, WhatsApp groups now for folks who are in similar situations and are free sharing and that cheerleading that you need to keep moving forward. And with that in mind, I always say I'm available. Feel free to reach out. My network is your network. I know so often we're just one introduction away from some magic happening. And if I can help make that introduction for you and what you've got going on, I'd be happy to do so.
So yeah, if you're listening to this, definitely check out the Portable platform and community because it can bring you the peace of mind, the benefits, services you need as an independent consultant. I think it's an amazing opportunity to help make your life a little bit easier. So Mike, where do people find Portable?
That's going to be my last little story. So it's actually spelled PORTABL.co. Portable, spelled correctly, was available, but it was $200,000. Portable without the E on the end, I got for £1.97. Whilst trying to be cool and clever, it does cause a little bit of confusion, but PORTABL.co will find us. And then I'm on LinkedIn.
I do think you are cool and clever. And also, that's what independent consultants do all the time. You've got to be nimble. You've got to be flexible. You've got to think outside the box. And there's a tiny little example of that. So I love it. Thanks for sharing that. So yeah, Portable, PORTABL.co, and the link to that and Mike's LinkedIn profile will be in the show notes if you're listening to this on the go. But Mike, love the story, love what you've built so far. Thanks for what you're doing and helping people around the world. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Cheers, Ben.
Thanks for joining us today on A Better HR Business, the podcast that explores the world of HR consulting and HR tech businesses. For show notes and downloads, go to www.getmorehrclients.com/podcast. That's getmorehrclients.com/podcast. Remember to subscribe and share the show with any friends who are busy growing a HR business. Thanks and see you next time.